Hello everyone, this is Zeeebo and welcome back to another video. So for today's video, we are going to talk about Crazed Shellbrute once again. And this time around, we're going to talk about the best teams without the use of Phraesto, because I saw quite a lot of comments about people having no Phraesto, not intending to invest in Phraesto, or having a really weak Phraesto such that they can't actually use Phraesto as a carry. So in today's video, we're going to answer how to team build, why Phraesto is so good, what are the different factors you need to consider, and what are some of the better units you can use so that you can build the best team against Crazed Shellbrute without the use of Phraesto. Okay, so without further ado, we'll start by answering why is Phraesto so good. Right, so there's 4 reasons to that. Number 1, Phraesto is one of the top damage dealer against Crazed Shellbrute because HP percentage damage turns out to be pretty decent against this boss. So on top of being one of the top DPS in this mode, he's also an excellent shield breaker, having 2 bodies that can cast the ultimate pretty consistently, dealing more than 300% damage to break the water barrier of the boss. And on top of that, Phraesto has 2 bodies, and both bodies are gulp targets or gulp targets at lower tier. So let's say if you have Phraesto just at 1 copy, you can't use him as the main damage dealer, it's fine. You can use him as the frontliner body to tank the gulp ability of the boss. So that's for the 2 bodies as gulp target at lower tier 0.3. And then for 0.4, this is for optimization of your damage. So the way you reposition your units is because Phraesto is a generally pretty slow unit. And depending on the movement speed of Phraesto as well as all your other units in your team, you can actually force your other units to be repositioned by putting Phraesto at the right points, such as centralizing your Mikola buff or centralizing your Shakir buff or whatever to maximize your damage. So due to all these different reasons, Phraesto is just insanely good for this boss, and that's why even at the lower tier, right, you can actually use him at least for 2 of the 4 pointers out here, at least for shield breaker as well as the 2 bodies to be the gulp target itself. So as a rule of thumb for team building for you guys, always use the higher tier units for your main DPS characters, because DPS, they need a lot of tiers for you to maximize your damage. And for Phraesto's case, if you don't have him at the high tier, just use him as the body to be eaten up by the boss. Okay, and without further ado, let's jump into the team building part as well as the different factors and the best units for the different roles out there in this boss. So for this part of this guide, all these different units have been tested extensively by the players at the Analytical Discord. So I will link up the guide as usual so that you guys can actually visit the guide to take a look at what are the different testings done by them. There's just a lot of different tests done and there's a lot of different team varieties. But for you to find the best team for your account, you need to answer all these different factors that I'm going to mention in terms of the roles to maximize your damage. Number 1, you need a really good carry or a DPS unit outside of Phraesto. So for this case, these are the units which are generally considered better than Phraesto if you have them at the Supreme Plus tier while you have a low tier Phraesto. So this is where you use Phraesto as the frontliner and you use this unit as the main carry for your team. So we have obviously the usual very powerful chip units like Smokey, OD as well as Didime. We also have Ludovic with insanely good ability if you have the EX weapon unlocked. So there is a lot of damage to be done from his EX weapon. And we also have Corin once you have the EX weapon unlocked. So these are good core carry units you can use. So obviously if you have other carries that are like, I'll say like for example like a Supreme Plus this year and she's probably your best unit, or maybe if you have a Supreme Plus Brian, right, these are your stronger units in your hero pool that can use them as sort of your main and secondary carry as well. So that's for the DPS carry position. And then we have this part where you need to answer. You need units with the ability to shield break. So the reason why you need shield break is because of this water barrier ability right here. So I'm gonna increase this first and talk about it. So water barrier over here reduces the damage taken by the boss by 70%. So you want to break this barrier as soon as possible, and the way to break it is you need to take 2 hits of base damage that exceeds 300% of the caster's attack. So you want units with the ability to have skills that hits 300% or more so that you can break this barrier easily to maximize the downtime on this barrier for you to max your damage itself. So that's why Phraesto is so damn good, because Phraesto's illusion plus the body is 2 units with 2 ultimates that can just instantly break the shield. So this is one of the reasons why you need a shield breaker. So So units with the ability to deal 300 insta damage is going to be good for the shield breaking role. So we have the likes of Kruger, right, from the skills as well as the ultimate. Kruger is also a good frontliner to be got by the boss, and he's also a good debuffer for the physical teams. Bryon has the insta 300% damage from the ultimate at the start of battle, so pretty good as one of the breakers as well as a semi DPS for the team in the Wilders faction. We also have Elsa. So Elsa over here has the ability to spam her ultimate to hit 300% really easily and quickly. But one thing I don't like about Elsa is how random she could be jumping. So you can manipulate that by trying her in different positions to hopefully keep her in a good position to spam her skill while not being eaten up by the boss or being killed by the boss itself. So that's one thing to consider when you're using Elsa. And obviously for the light barrier side, we have Cassidy, very good bosser with the ability to remove the barrier, and also Sinbad. So these are the good shield breakers with some additional abilities or additional roles built into them that you can use when you build your team up. So these are the breakers. And then next we have the frontliners. So the reason why you need frontliners, you need at least 2 of them minimally, because there is this ability known as the Chem Gulp. So this ability will basically eat up 2 of your units from the start to the end of the battle. So at the start, he will start eating 1 unit at the 83 seconds, and then 1 at the 62 seconds, so on and so forth. So the first unit to be eaten will be released 40 seconds after the first one, and then the second unit will be released 40 seconds later. So at any point in time in the middle of the battle, you will at least need 2 frontliners to sort of take this skill so that your other units can output damage safely. And that's why all the one tile frontliners, they are okay for the job. And this is a job for Phraesto if you have him at the lower tier. So this is if you don't have Phraesto at all, because if you have been logging into the game and if you have been playing the game for quite a bit, you should have at least 1 copy of him from the daily login events. So that is really like, if you don't have any Phraesto, right, you use these units to sort of fill the role, but because you need at least 2 bodies to be eaten up by the boss, you will definitely lose a little bit of DPS if you don't use Phraesto at all for this role over here. So these are the units that are good for this purpose. So you have Torrent, good frontliner as well as the ability to debuff with the magical charm. Niru, also good frontliner to be eaten up, and also has the attack buff from the magical charm to increase your damage of your carry for 45 seconds at the start of battle. Iron over here, also good, right? Go in, get an ultimate off, get a magical defense down so that your other Wilders character can actually do more damage. And Kruger, like I mentioned earlier, good frontliner, good debuffer, and then you can also use Chippy for the light bearer faction. So using any 1 tile attacking unit works, but using 1 copy of Phraesto will do the job and free up the slot for other roles in the team. So specifically for Shakir is not that good if you don't have Phraesto to sort of force him into an optimal position, because Shakir actually goes into the lupine state or the lupin state, which causes him to be unaffected, and then he will be instantaneously defeated, because if the enemy is unaffected or steadfast, they will be crushed immediately. So you don't want that. You want units to be gobbled up to sort of be the ones to be gobbled up multiple times, at least 2 times in battle. So that's why you want to use other units without unaffected or steadfast. So this is the frontliner or the gulp target or gulp target. And then next one, lastly, to fill up the void for the team, you need some supports, right? Either giving you energy support, buff, heals, or debuffs on the boss so that you can hit harder. Right, so the usual good buffers like Mikola, Smokey still valid, Rainer still really good. But one thing about Rainer is if you're using Rainer, then you need 3 other units to get the factional bonus first for the talent tiles to activate, and then talent tile is just massive against this boss because factional talent carriers or your prime carriers do 40% more damage against the boss. So that's why you want our dear Rainer to sort of be in the team, but you still need 3 other units to fulfill the other roles first before using Rainer. Then Rowan is for the light bearer team for the energy charging as well as the light bearer factional talent. You can use Rowan even at the lower tier because his skills are not affected that much by the stats, and the most important skill, which is the ultimate, it's not stat reliant, so 1 or 2 copy of Rowan is okay as long as he can survive. And then you have Parisa for the normal attack and attack speed buff so that your carries can hit a little bit faster and harder. So that's for the support side. So next we will talk about the factional talents. So factional talent is super duper important against this boss because, like I mentioned earlier, the boss will actually take 40% more damage from the prime carriers. So depending on how you build your team, depending on your strongest units as well as your best combination of units, you decide which talent tile you want to use as the prime carrier tile. You want to give the units that use DPS the prime carrier, because that way they can hit 40% harder for you to get more damage. And choosing the factions depends on obviously the unit tiers based on like the carry slot, the support slot, as well as the debuffer slot, the shield breaker slot. So for the frontliner, you don't actually need them at a super high tier. So units that are marked by the gulp target or the gulp bracket, they are basically units which you just send on the front line to be eaten by the boss. So for the light bearer side, the general battle combination will include Corin, Rowan, as well as one frontliner. So in this case, you can fit in maybe one more frontliner because you need 2 units to be eaten up by the boss, and then 1 more unit to do DPS against the boss itself, or maybe even a healer like Rowan that is able to heal and also do damage against the boss is a good addition to this team. And then for the Wilder side, if you take a look at their core, Lily May is usually the carry unit with Bryon as a shield breaker as well as a secondary DPS. So if your Bryon is decently built up, you put both Lily May and Bryon at the back line for them to benefit from the Wilder's faction buff, and then you send in 2 frontliners, Iron plus maybe 1 more frontliner, like for example Mikola for example, and then you can actually put in a Smokey to maximize your damage. So depending on how your different units are built up, whether or not you got 1 copy Phraesto to tank the gulp ability, you can actually use Wilder's one, in my honest take. I think this is probably the better one because Lily May is generally the most well-built unit across the game by a lot of different groups of players. So this build is pretty much applicable for most people out there. And then we have the Mauler Factional Tile. You can use Smokey, which is an insanely good carry unit, as well as a support unit, with Kruger being the frontliner with insane buff from Mikola. And you can also fit in Smokey into the team as one of the DPSs as well. So Mauler as well as Wilder, I think they are generally more versatile. They're more like well covered by most people, and they are good factions to actually build around if you don't have our dear Phraesto, right? So these 2 factions are pretty decent. So there's also the Graveborn side. So Graveborn mostly have, I'll say, like the good frontliners. So you use Ludovic as a support and a carry, and then you use Torrent and Sylvina or Torrent and Niru as your top targets, and then you throw in more carries or more debuffers into your team for you to tank the other abilities of the boss itself. So now once you have the different factions, the different units selected, the different units to do the different roles like I mentioned earlier, you can actually finish up your team depending on what unit. So like I mentioned earlier, for the light bearer tile, if we are planning to use Rowan as well as Corin over here, then what you can do is use our dear Chippy as a frontliner, right? Put Mikola here so that Mikola runs up, gets the ultimate off, and then becomes the frontliner as well to be the second gulp target, and then you have Smokey for the buff, and then Rowan for support for the team, for your Corin to spam the skill to hit harder as well. So you can also choose to use another light bearer carry, for example Cassidy for this slot, so that Cassidy can do more damage. Or you can use Sinbad as well because prime carrier does more damage against the boss. So Rowan in this team might not be the best because you only have like 1 unit that actually wants to spam their skill. Chippy will be a gulp target. It's not going to spam the skill that much. Mikola only casts a skill 1 time if you have her at Supreme Plus. But if you don't have her at Supreme Plus, then you might need some energy support from Rowan to keep the uptime of the Mikola buff itself. So that's with regards to the light bearer side. I think this is just a suggestion. You have to actually build the team based on your own collection, based on what units are the best built inside your own account. So this is for the light bearer side. Now this is for the Wilder side. So we are using Lily May and Bryon as the best carry on the backline so that they get the best buff from the factional talent tile. So you have 2 frontliners. We're using Seth as well as Iron because these 2 units are really good to be eaten up. And then, right, your backliners that are buffed by Smokey can output damage safely. So the artifact of choice for all the teams without Phraesto is using Resonating Spell. You just buff up 1 carry for the carry to do as much damage as possible so they can hit your peak damage. So that's why you see that all the team recommendations that I have, they're all with the Resonating Spell. Okay, now for the Wilder side, we are going to use Seth, Smokey, and Mikola, and we are using Reina as the buffer for Lily May here, as well as the debuff on the boss. So for this case, I think there might be some positioning that you need to play around with, because for the Mauler Factional Talent, what it does for your prime carrier is it gives you the steadfast ability. So you can't actually just send a unit in randomly and then not get eaten if you don't have Phraesto. So this is one team which I think you might have to play around with in terms of your prime carrier positioning, and that's why I only give Lily May the only prime carrier slot, because I don't think there's another unit. You can put Smokey here as well obviously, but you have to sort of figure out a position for for Mikola and Seth, such that Seth and Mikola will take turn to be eaten up, and Smokey doesn't get eaten up by the boss, so that he doesn't die immediately, and then that's where you lose a lot of buff and damage. So that's for the Mauler side. So Mauler's fractional talent is something that is less friendly if you don't have Phraesto, because if you have Phraesto, you can just send Phraesto in and then reposition all the other units to min-max your damage, and then from there you sort of adjust your teams accordingly. So lastly, for the Graveborn side, if you don't have Phraesto, then you can definitely use this as well. So Ludovic on the prime carrier slot, so these units, they will get the stat buff from Sylvina, and then Lily May as well as Ludovic can be the damage dealer, and you have the heal from Ludovic with the attack buff from Nero. You can put Nero in front of Lily May as well for the attack buff. So depending on who you have better built up, you can actually adjust the positionings accordingly. So these are the different teams that do not feature Phraesto that you guys can definitely use to try to min-max your damage. Now, if you have Phraesto at just one copy, put Phraesto in the frontmost tile 12 and 13. So these two tiles are the tiles where the units will get eaten up first. They will have the highest priority. So let's say if you are using the Graveborn tile, I think we use the Wildest tile for best example. So in this case, right, you have Brian, you have Iron, and then you have Lily May. So if you want to use Phraesto as the front body, you put one Phraesto at tile 12 and then one Phraesto at tile 13, right? And then you use Iron at tile 7 or tile 4 so that this unit will not be eaten up. So this will have to depend on your own account, and you change the positioning accordingly. But in most cases, Phraesto's damage is actually, I'll say, really decent even at a lower copy. So then it's up to you to actually reposition your other units to be gulped up so that you can maximize your damage with like really low tier Phraesto as well. So this is pretty much it for the best teams to use for those players without Phraesto or not intending to use Phraesto. These are the different team building ideas that you need to satisfy, and you can try to optimize your own account to form the best teams based on these different conditions right here. So thank you very much for tuning in, and if you have Phraesto, do try to use him even at just one copy. But if not, these are the different suggestions for you guys, and thank you very much for tuning in. Do remember to like and subscribe to see more AFK journey video from the channel, and I'll see you guys again in my next video. Bye guys.